Hey everyone, and welcome to my review for House of the Dragon Season 2, Episode 1, A Son for a Son. So right away I'll start by saying that I really enjoyed most of this episode. The first 40 minutes or so I felt were absolutely excellent. I was really happy, impressed, and optimistic for the season. Although the ending was a disappointment to me, I still enjoyed it overall and think the season, for the most part, will be well done. Like all my reviews, I'll start with the positives, then move on to the negatives, my top 5 moments, and a final score. So looking at the positives, there are a lot of them. Almost everything I saw until the ending was very good, beginning with the great intro music and credits, which to me looked even better than last season. I think I recognized a lot of what I saw, like images of old Valyria, the Doom, Aegon the Conqueror, Harrenhal, Maegor the Cruel, the Red Keep, King Jaehaerys and Queen Alysanne, the Great Council, Aegon and Rhaenyra, and several dragons, including what I think were Balerion, Vhagar, Meraxes, Silverwing, and Vermithor. I'm sure I missed some things, but those were the ones that really stood out after a couple viewings. Then the greatness continued with that opening scene. From the crow delivering the news of Lucerys to the glimpse of the Night's Watch, the intro of Cregan Stark, the discussion with Jacaerys, and the visit to the Wall, all of it was perfect. I'll go into more detail about it during the top 5 moments, but for now I just want to say that I loved the opening to this episode. Moving on to the first Daemon scene where he tried to order Rhaenys to help him fight Vhagar. This was another great scene for me. Although Daemon is far too volatile and single-minded for his own good, his frustration is completely understandable. In fact, everyone's reactions and attitudes are entirely believable. Daemon is upset the duties of the kingdom and war are being ignored, like the critical mission to secure the Riverlands while the queen takes personal time she can't afford. But at the same time, it's not like anyone can realistically blame a mother for grieving her son, or expect her to just ignore or move on so quickly from such a profound pain. So while I agree with Daemon that the queen is being irresponsible, I also can't expect her to act differently, which is why I enjoyed the response of Rhaenys, who is far more empathetic to the queen's pain as she went through the same thing when she lost Laena Velaryon. That being said, the actress Emma Darcy who plays Rhaenyra is really doing an amazing job, as you can see the pain in her eyes as she searched for and found the remains of her son. And the rage on her face when she returned to Dragonstone was so visceral, it seems impossible not to empathize with her and the position she's in. Switching to King's Landing and the Red Keep, I loved how they demonstrated city defenses and showed everyone is on alert for a dragon attack. I also thought the decision to put Alicent in a relationship with Criston Cole makes a lot of sense. Now personally, I don't enjoy seeing them together because I don't like the characters, but the connection they have does make sense, and their behavior is consistent to the type of hypocrisy they've demonstrated all along, so to me the relationship rang very true and is believable. I also enjoyed Helena's first scene, where she mentions a fear of rats, which was some exciting foreshadowing of the events to come, as was seeing the rat catcher walking through the castle early on. Then there was clever Larys Strong making moves to become the secret confidant of the king, moving on from Alicent who no longer holds much power and attaching himself to the man in charge. Although his character is despicable, it's hard not to respect his intelligence and cunning, similar to Littlefinger in Game of Thrones. Lastly, for the positives, I want to mention Jacaerys returning, reporting to his mother, and attending his brother's funeral, which was another touching and beautiful scene. They really did a good job with Jacaerys because he's behaving exactly like what I expected from the books. Intelligent, charming, courageous, rational, and with a deep love for his family. To me, he's one of the most similar characters to the source material. I also liked seeing Daemon's daughters, even if they didn't say much, as it's nice seeing Baela with Jacaerys and Rhaena mourning her betrothed Lucerys. So that's it for the positives. Now let's switch over to the negatives, starting with the petition scene. I actually love this scene, but there was one thing that I wasn't sure about. Maybe it's just me, but I found it really odd/noticeable that one of the peasants was named Hugh and worked as a smith, which means he works with hammers. To me, this seems like a reference to the Dragonseed Hugh Hammer, which is fine and would be enjoyable, except that it made me think they were making a reference because they won't include him and his plotline in the show. And if that's true, then it would be a big disappointment. But maybe I'm just reading too much into it, and he'll still be in the show. Next, I want to talk about Alicent Hightower's development as a character. Since I've never been a fan of the Greens, I never really liked Alicent or her allies. But in Season 1, I still had a great deal of respect for many of them, including Otto Hightower and the Queen. Because even if I don't agree with their decisions, I recognize they're doing what they think is in the best interest of their family. And their actions, however extreme, were to some degree understandable. But by the end of Season 1 and now the first episode of Season 2, I'm finding it harder to maintain the same level of respect for Alicent Hightower. Not only is she a ridiculous hypocrite with all her evil deeds and secret relationships, but she's proving less and less competent every time she tries to give advice. Her hesitation to fight the war properly and laughable desire to seek a more peaceful solution after they killed Rhaenyra's son is so utterly absurd. I was glad to see Otto and the King dismissing her suggestions. Now, while these negatives did take away from the episode a bit, I still thought this was an excellent premiere up to this point, and could easily ignore or dismiss these minor issues. Unfortunately, their depiction of blood and cheese was, to me, haphazard, sanitized, and anticlimactic. I'm gonna talk about it more during the top 5 moments, but for now, everything from the arrest of Mysaria to the competence of blood and cheese really dampened my enjoyment quite a bit. But now let's move on to the top 5 moments of the night, beginning with number 5, which was the shocking sympathy I momentarily felt for Aegon II. To me, the behavior of the Greens makes it difficult to like or root for any of them in any way, but I have to say I was pleasantly surprised with King Aegon this episode. Of course, he's a drunk, highly incompetent, a bad father, bad husband, and ridiculous king. However, what I didn't expect was that he would actually show kindness and compassion toward the small folk presenting petitions. I was really expecting Joffrey-like behavior, to laugh at them or purposely harm them, but instead he seemed like he genuinely wanted to help them. Granted, it's still embarrassing that his grandfather had to explain the most basic concepts of administration to him, but I was absolutely shocked to see a level of decency on display. And even though his behavior was unlikely to be purely selfless, as his true desire, I think, was to be seen as a good king, I was still pleasantly surprised by his attitude and actually gained some respect for him. At the number 4 spot, we stay with the Greens to focus on the friendship between Criston Cole and Aemon One-Eye. Again, I don't like either of these characters, but still recognize how well they're being presented and enjoyed the moment of friendship and fellowship between the Prince and the Kingsguard. I also enjoyed the subject of their conversation because they were describing much of what we know will happen in the Crownlands moving forward. For the third best moment of the night, we go to Driftmark, where Lord Corlys met and spoke with Alan of Hall, who went on to mention his brother, who we know is Adam of Hall. From the start, I thought this was a good scene, but I was confused as to why Corlys seemed to be acting hesitantly and strange. Alan was also acting a bit standoffish, but everything made sense when they revealed his name. Suddenly, this became one of my favorite scenes, and I absolutely love that we're getting to know these brothers. Some spoilers coming up here, but for those who know the story from the books, Adam and his younger brother Alan are the supposed bastard sons of Laenor Velaryon, though in truth, it's more likely they are the illegitimate sons of Corlys Velaryon, who can't recognize them because he fears the fury of his wife Rhaenys. Now that they've been introduced, I can't wait for the Dragon Seed moment when Adam claims Sea Smoke and joins the Blacks in the war. At the number 2 spot, I'm going back to the beginning to talk about Cregan Stark and Jacaerys Velaryon at the Wall. This was such an excellent scene. Everything from the clever conversation, the mention of Torrhen Stark bending the knee, the look into a Stark joining the Night's Watch, the shock of Jacaerys staring over the wall, the mention of 2,000 old winter wolves marching to help the Blacks. All of it was amazing. I also really enjoyed when Cregan mentioned Jaehaerys and Alysanne visiting the Wall, and their dragons refusing to fly past. This is a slight change from the books where only Alysanne visited the Wall, but I don't mind small changes like this, so the mention actually added to my enjoyment. Excellent scene, and I can't wait to see more of Cregan Stark. Now we'll discuss what I chose for the number 1 moment of the night. But before starting, I want to clarify I chose this as number 1 because I felt it was the most impactful and important moment of the episode. However, it was not chosen because I actually enjoyed the scene, because unfortunately I didn't. Before we get into what was for me a disappointing depiction of blood and cheese, I want to freely admit I went into this episode with very high and possibly unrealistic expectations. The story of Blood and Cheese is one of my favorite things in all the books, and for me it's on a similar level to the execution of Eddard Stark and the Red Wedding. So I was expecting this episode to have an explosive, horrifying ending that sent the audience into hysterics, similar to those other scenes, but instead they presented a toned-down ending which barely scratched the surface of the original story. From the beginning, I was unimpressed, starting with the arrest and interrogation of Mysaria. In the books, the White Worm seemed so formidable, sharp, ruthless, and resourceful, a true power player in the capital and a valuable ally to the Blacks. But in the episode, they made her a sad wretch who didn't even try to save herself and just sat quietly in prison until Daemon gave her a chance to be useful. Then they met Blood, who was working as a gold cloak instead of a butcher, and that's when I started to prepare myself for changes and possible disappointment. So in the show, they had Daemon use Mysaria's connections to hire Blood, an old friend in the Gold Cloaks, and Cheese, a rat catcher of the Red Keep, to infiltrate the castle and kill Aemon Targaryen as retribution for the death of Lucerys Velaryon. But when they couldn't find him, they found Helaena with the twins and so killed the boy. Although Cheese seemed confident initially, once inside he seemed so lost and scared. Then they both just walked around freely with no guards in sight, which I suppose could be explained in some ways, like how they mentioned Larys got rid of many servants and how Criston was with the Queen instead of on duty. But it still seemed strange to me considering how paranoid they were about possible reprisal. And then they seemed to find the Queen by accident, prompting a very surprising reaction from Helaena, who almost immediately gave up her son and walked away in a daze of subdued shock, without any of the devastating tears or horrifying screams from the book. I think for many people, the scene was probably still impactful and shocking, and the creators probably felt the original story was too brutal and violent for TV, and maybe they're right, but for me, it really felt like a big letdown. In the books, Mysaria is portrayed as a great and powerful underworld spy master who hired Blood and Cheese on a mission to kill a son for a son. Blood used to be a gold cloak but was fired for beating a whore to death while drunk, and so followed Cheese as they expertly infiltrated the Red Keep. As there was no way to enter Maegor's Holdfast where they might target the king, they instead infiltrated the Tower of the Hand to arrive in Alicent's bedchamber where they killed a bedmaid and tied down the Queen Mother. Then they waited for Helaena and her 3 children, Jaehaerys, Jaehaera, and Maelor, who visited Alicent every night. Once Helaena arrived, they took Maelor, introduced themselves as debt collectors, and forced her to choose which of her sons would die. Helaena was devastated and begged them to kill her instead, but they refused. In tears, she continued to hesitate, and so they threatened to rape Jaehaera and kill all her kids, forcing her to choose her youngest Maelor, reasoning he was too young to understand what was happening. After making her choice, Cheese grinned and mockingly told the boy his mother wanted him dead, before signaling Blood, who instead cut off the head of her eldest son, Jaehaerys Targaryen. Blood and Cheese then successfully escaped with the severed head, as Helaena screamed in horror. That level of devastation was supposed to be the big moment that brought this show to another level, like the death of Ned Stark and the Red Wedding. And maybe for other people it still did that, but unfortunately I mostly just felt disappointment. So that's my review for House of the Dragon Season 2 Episode 1, A Son for a Son. Like I said, overall I did like the episode, but it was brought down by their depiction of Blood and Cheese. I still think the episode deserves a respectable score, as much of the story, the characters, the acting, the sets, the wardrobe, and music were all excellent, and had they done a better job with Blood and Cheese, I would happily give the premiere a 9.5 or 10. But given how let down I felt by the end, I find it hard to give anything more than a 7.5 out of 10. But what did you all think? Am I being too harsh and unrealistic? How did you guys feel about the Blood and Cheese ending and the episode overall? Let me know in the comments below. And so that's it for this week. Be sure to come back next time as I'll be reviewing every episode while producing Dance of the Dragons themed videos for regular release on Sundays, followed by a season recap when it's over. So for now, thank you for listening and I'll see you next time. A special thanks to all those who contribute to Civilization X, like Sir Daeron of House Ashford, Fred Heartless, Knight of Iron and Ice, Ishmael Ahmed of Shamidiana, and Barachado. If you'd like to help the channel, be sure to give a like, leave a comment, subscribe, and click on the links below, or else go to patreon.com/civilizationx, where you can gain early access to videos, vote on future content, and watch the Patreon-only series, Heroes of Lore and Legend.